I used to think the world made sense, until I found these paradoxes that completely broke my brain. Even experts can't agree on the answers. What if tolerance could destroy itself? What if statistics could flip reality? And what if hope could actually make things worse? Today, we're tackling 4 of the strangest paradoxes ever, with 2 sharp minds ready to break them down.
I'm Maya, and my job is simple. Ask the tough, weird, and painfully obvious questions. If something doesn't make sense, I'm calling it out.
And I'm Dr. Vaughn. I've studied logic and philosophy for years, and I promise, once you see the logic, you might start questioning everything you thought was true.
Buckle up. This conversation might just change the way you see reality. Let's begin. Imagine you throw a party where everyone is welcome, but then someone shows up and starts insulting your guests. If you let them stay, they ruin the fun for everyone. If you kick them out, aren't you being intolerant? This is the tolerance paradox, the idea that too much tolerance can actually destroy tolerance itself. But if that's true, should we really allow all opinions, even dangerous ones? Let's see what our guests think.
Okay, hold up. So, tolerance is supposed to be a good thing, right? If we want a free society, we have to accept all opinions, even the ones we don't like. But now you're telling me that if we're too tolerant, it could actually destroy tolerance. That's like saying too much peace leads to war. It makes no sense. If I believe in free speech, I should defend it no matter what. But if someone uses free speech to spread dangerous ideas, like hate or violence, then do we have to let them keep talking? And if we don't, doesn't that make us just as bad as the people we're trying to stop? So what's the solution? Do we allow all ideas, even the ones that could destroy freedom? Or do we limit speech? And if so, who gets to decide what's allowed?
This is exactly why the tolerance paradox is such a problem. If you allow people to spread intolerant ideas, ones that actively seek to oppress others, then eventually, those ideas grow strong enough to eliminate tolerance entirely. Think about it. If a society allows extremist groups to rise unchecked, those groups might gain enough power to take over and then ban all other viewpoints. So ironically, to protect freedom, we sometimes have to restrict certain freedoms. But where do we draw the line? Should we ban hate speech? What about misinformation? If we start censoring things, who decides what's too dangerous to say? Some people say the answer is obvious. Others say it's a slippery slope. The real question is, can we trust anyone to decide which ideas are safe?
Okay, let's test this. Let's say I own a bookstore. I sell every kind of book. History, philosophy, even some controversial ones. Then one day a guy comes in and asks for books that promote hate. If I refuse, am I protecting my customers? Or am I violating free speech? What if a social media platform bans certain political views? Are they protecting people, or are they just silencing voices they don't like? It's weird. When we see a government censor something, we call it oppression. But when a private company does it, we say they're just enforcing guidelines. So what's the difference? If stopping intolerance means limiting speech, then is tolerance really about freedom? Or is it just about controlling the conversation?
That's the heart of the paradox. True tolerance means allowing different viewpoints, but if we allow intolerance to grow, it could destroy tolerance itself. That's why this debate is so tricky. Historically, societies that allowed extremism to spread unchecked often lost their freedoms altogether. But here's the catch. If we ban too many ideas, we might become the very thing we're trying to prevent. This is why free speech laws exist, but also why nearly every country has some limits, like bans on violent threats. The problem is, once we start drawing lines, those lines can keep shifting. One day it's just banning hate speech. The next day it's banning ideas someone simply doesn't like. If we're not careful, the cure could become just as dangerous as the disease.
So basically, there's no perfect answer. Either we allow intolerant people to destroy tolerance, or we limit ideas and risk becoming thought police. That's terrifying. And now I'm thinking, does this go beyond just speech? What about technology? If social media filters what we see, are they protecting us or controlling what we believe? And if history teaches us that too much tolerance can destroy freedom, then are we already making the same mistake? Are we building a world where free speech is just an illusion? And if so, is anyone truly free?
And that's why this paradox will never have an easy solution. Some believe all speech should be allowed, no matter how dangerous, Others say some ideas must be shut down before they cause harm. Both sides have risks. Ignore the problem and intolerance grows. Censor too much and we lose freedom. The real question isn't just who should decide. It's what happens if we get it wrong. Because if history has shown us anything, it's that societies don't always see the danger until it's too late.
So, does true tolerance mean accepting even the most dangerous ideas? Or does protecting freedom sometimes mean limiting it? But if you think this paradox is confusing, wait until you hear the next one. What if statistics could completely flip reality, proving two opposite things at the same time? Welcome to Simpson's paradox. Ever checked your grades and noticed that you did better in every subject, but somehow your overall average went down? Or maybe you heard about a study where a treatment worked better for both men and women separately, but when combined, it looked worse for everyone? That's Simpson's paradox. A weird statistical illusion where numbers can tell two completely opposite stories depending on how you look at them. But if data can be this misleading, can we really trust statistics at all? Let's find out.
All right, explain this to me like I'm 5 because I swear numbers shouldn't work like this. If I do better in every subject, my average should go up, not down. If a medicine helps both men and women, then it should help everyone, right? But somehow, when we combine the numbers, the whole thing flips. That sounds like some kind of mathematical scam. And now I'm worried. If statistics can tell two opposite stories at the same time, does that mean every chart, graph, and scientific study I've ever seen could actually be misleading me? Are numbers just lying to us in fancy ways?
I get why this feels like cheating, but it's actually one of the most important lessons in statistics. How you group data changes what you see. Simpson's paradox happens when an overall trend disappears, or even reverses, when data is divided into smaller groups. It's not that the numbers are lying, it's that they're showing different layers of reality. For example, imagine two hospitals treating the same illness. If you separate by severity, you find that each hospital does better in treating every group of patients. But when you combine the data, one hospital suddenly looks worse. Why? Because one of them treated more severe cases, skewing the overall numbers. The same thing happens in university admissions, sports statistics, even politics. It's why data alone doesn't tell the full story.
Okay, but that's exactly what freaks me out. So depending on how I group the numbers, I can prove two completely opposite things? That sounds dangerous. What if I want to show that a policy is working, but all I have to do is tweak the data to make it look that way? Or what if a company wants to prove their product is the best, but they just use Simpson's paradox to make their numbers look good? This means that politicians, businesses, and even scientists could be using perfectly accurate statistics to make you believe something that isn't actually true. So how do we know when numbers are actually telling the truth? Or is truth just something we edit based on what we want people to believe?
Now you're asking the right questions. Simpson's paradox is a goldmine for manipulation. People can present numbers in a way that fits their argument without ever lying. It's not just a problem in politics or business. It even happens in science. That's why researchers have to be careful about how they interpret data. If you see a news article saying eating chocolate makes you live longer, ask yourself, how was the data grouped? If a study says this school has lower acceptance rates for women, check if the data is split by department. The problem isn't the numbers. It's how we interpret them. And if you think about it, this means something really unsettling. Most people don't realize how often they're being misled by statistics.
Okay, I officially trust nothing now. If numbers can be flipped around just by grouping them differently, then how do we ever know what's real? Does this mean every fact I've ever read could be hiding a completely different truth? What if history books do the same thing, cherry-picking events to make certain things look better or worse? What if crime rates, health studies, and government policies always have a hidden version of the truth that we never see? If we can't even trust math to give us a straight answer, then what can we trust?
Numbers are never just numbers. They're stories told through data. Two people can look at the same statistics and walk away with opposite conclusions. That's why critical thinking matters more than ever. Always ask, what data are they showing me? What data are they not showing me? Because the real question isn't just do numbers lie? It's who decides which version of the truth you get to see.
So if numbers can prove two opposite things at once, can we ever truly trust statistics? Or is everything just a numbers game? But if that blew your mind, wait until you hear the next paradox. What if a tiny, meaningless change could actually make a huge difference, but we never notice when it happens? Get ready for the grain of millet paradox. It's weirder than you think. Ever wonder when a small change actually becomes a big change? If you eat one cookie, it doesn't make you unhealthy. Eat 10? Still fine. But if you eat 100, now it's a problem. So where's the exact line? That's the grain of millet paradox, also known as the Sorites paradox. It asks a simple but impossible question. When does something small officially become big? And if we can't answer that, does that mean categories like rich or bold or even alive are just made up? Let's see what our guests think.
Okay, let me get this straight. If I take one step, I'm not going for a walk. But if I take 1,000,000 steps, I've traveled the world. At what step did it officially become a trip? Or let's say I start losing hair. If I lose one, I'm still fine. Lose 100, okay, not great. But at some point, I become bald. When did that actually happen? Where's the moment where the not bald version of me turns into the bald version? The problem is, there's no single moment. But somehow, we all agree that bald people exist. If we can't even define when something changes, does that mean words like tall, old, or even rich are just meaningless labels?
Exactly. The grain of millet paradox forces us to ask, how do we define change? If you drop 1 grain of millet, it makes no sound. Drop 2, still nothing. But if you drop 1,000, suddenly there's a noise. So when did it actually go from silent to noisy? This paradox exists everywhere. Money? Adding $1 doesn't make you rich, but at some point you are. Health? Eating one burger won't make you unhealthy, but a lifetime of bad eating will. The problem is our brains like clear categories. But reality doesn't work that way. Change is gradual. But our language forces us to pretend there's a moment when something becomes different. Are these categories real, or are they just shortcuts we use to make sense of the world?
So basically, words are just lying to us. Like if I say someone is tall, what does that even mean? Compared to a baby? Sure. Compared to a giraffe? Not even close. And if there's no exact point where someone becomes tall, then maybe tall isn't even a real thing. It's just a guess based on what we're used to seeing. And now I'm wondering, if we do this with height, money, and age, do we do this with everything? Like what about intelligence? At what IQ does someone go from average to genius? What about love? At what exact moment do you go from liking someone to loving them? And if we can't answer that, do those things even exist?
That's the disturbing part. If we push this paradox far enough, we start questioning everything. Our world is built on categories: rich versus poor, young versus old, healthy versus unhealthy. But the reality is, these categories don't exist in nature. They're just labels we create to make life easier to understand. And that has real consequences. Ever wonder why legal definitions are so complicated? Because lawmakers have to decide exactly when something counts. What speed is too fast in a school zone? How much pollution makes air unsafe? If we can't define those precisely, then does that mean laws, rules, and even morality are all built on vague, made-up lines?
Okay, this is officially ruining my brain. If we can't define when something changes, then what even is change? Like if someone slowly becomes a bad person by making one tiny bad choice at a time, when do they officially become bad? What if everything we think we know is just our brain tricking us into believing that things are either this or that, when really everything is just a slow, blurry transition? If life isn't made of clear-cut moments, is anything actually real?
And that's the real mind bender here. If there's no exact moment when something changes, then maybe we've been looking at the world all wrong. Maybe nothing ever truly becomes something else. It just gradually shifts without us noticing. But if that's true, then we have an even bigger question to ask. If small changes go unnoticed, how do we know when we're actually in control of our own lives? That's where the next paradox comes in. What if hope and optimism could actually be the reason we fail? Welcome to the Stockdale Paradox.
So, if small changes are impossible to pinpoint, does that mean nothing ever really changes? Or is our whole understanding of reality just a giant illusion? But if this paradox messed with your head, wait until you hear the next one. What if too much optimism is actually the reason people fail? The Stockdale paradox is next. And trust me, it's not what you think. We've all heard it before. Stay positive and everything will work out. But what if that's actually terrible advice? What if being too optimistic is the reason people fail? That's the Stockdale paradox, where blind hope can be just as dangerous as giving up. But if believing in success can make us fail, then how do we keep going when things get tough? Let's see what our guests think.
Okay, now this one makes zero sense. If I want to succeed, I need to believe in myself, right? People always say, think positive, visualize success, manifest your dreams. But now you're telling me that too much optimism can actually make me more likely to fail? That's like saying drinking too much water can dehydrate you. And if that's true, does that mean pessimists, people who expect everything to go wrong, actually have an advantage? I need answers because if positivity is secretly making my life worse, I need to know how to fix it ASAP.
I get why this seems crazy, but this paradox is based on real experience. It comes from Admiral James Stockdale, who survived 7 years in a brutal prisoner of war camp. When people asked him how he made it through, his answer was shocking. He saw reality for what it was, while still believing he'd survive. But here's the twist. The ones who didn't make it? The optimists. They kept saying, we'll be rescued by Christmas. Then Christmas came and went, and they weren't rescued. Then they said, okay, by Easter. And that didn't happen either. Eventually, they lost hope and broke down. But Stockdale survived because he accepted the brutal truth of his situation, while still believing he'd get through it in the long run. That's why blind optimism can be dangerous. It can set us up for disappointment we're not prepared to handle.
So what you're saying is, being too hopeful actually kills people. That's terrifying, but also kind of makes sense. Like, I've seen this happen in real life. People start a business thinking this is going to be huge in 6 months. Then 6 months pass, nothing happens, and they give up completely. But the ones who survive are the ones who say, this is going to be really hard, but I'll figure it out. Same thing with people trying to lose weight or learn a new skill. If they expect fast results, they get frustrated and quit. So if blind optimism is bad, does that mean pessimists actually have it right? Should we all just expect the worst so we don't get disappointed?
Not quite, because the other extreme is just as bad. If you believe nothing will ever work out, then you won't even try. That's why the real trick is balancing two opposing mindsets. Brutal realism. Put deep belief in the end goal. You have to accept that things will be difficult, that you will fail along the way, but you also have to believe that you will make it through. Stockdale didn't just hope things would get better. He acknowledged how bad they were, but never let it break him. In a way, this paradox is a lesson in emotional survival. Too much hope and you get crushed by reality. Too much pessimism and you never take action. The real question is, how do we find the right balance?
Wow, this explains so much about why people struggle with long-term goals. Everyone wants quick wins, but the reality is things take years, not weeks. And now I'm thinking, does this apply to how we handle failure too? Like if someone expects success right away and they fail, they think, that's it, I'm a failure forever. But if someone expects struggle and setbacks, they keep going. Maybe this paradox isn't just about optimism. It's about how we mentally handle challenges. And if that's true, does this mean our entire culture is setting us up to fail by constantly selling instant success instead of long-term endurance?
That's exactly the danger of unrealistic expectations. We live in a world of instant gratification. We expect results now, and when they don't happen, we give up. The Stockdale paradox shows us that the key to success isn't just believing in the future. It's preparing for the worst while staying determined. Some of the most successful people in history didn't make it because things were easy. They made it because they stayed in the game longer than everyone else. But this paradox raises an even bigger question. If our mindset determines our success or failure, do we actually have as much control over our lives as we think? That's where things get really weird.
So, if blind optimism can destroy us and pure pessimism keeps us stuck, then how do we find the balance? And more importantly, how much of our success is really in our control? Let us know in the comments. And if paradoxes like this blow your mind, click on the next video. Because trust me, there's plenty more reality-breaking ideas waiting for you.